All right, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Enough to Keep Going podcast. Whew, glad to be back after a week off. We took Labor Day weekend here in the States off because this is a labor of love, but we also have commitments and family and other things to take care of. So thanks for bearing with us. Hope your last week was not too disappointing since we were not there to join you along with it. But we are all here tonight, which is great. We got lots to talk about, so we're going to get to it here. Joining me tonight, I am your host, DBQ Hams, and Tao Master just went live on the mic with a deep sigh. How are you, Tao?
I'm good. Sorry, I didn't know I said that loud. I'm doing well. Thank you. Sorry, I just got home. I was kind of running late too myself, so just trying to catch my breath.
That's okay. We're glad to be here. Thanks for being here. And Nate, thanks for joining us. We are running a little late, but always on the boards is Game Logic, making sure we are live and moving forward. How are you, Game?
Good, man. Good. How are you guys?
Doing well. Well, let's go ahead, Game Logic. I appreciate your Hollow Knight background, and we've got some Star Wars Outlaw background to the video if you're watching us here. So we've got a few games to talk about tonight, along with this week's news stories. The way we do every week on Enough to Keep Going is that we'll hit some of the big releases or big games that we've been playing this week. We'll hit some news that stood out to us, and then wrap it up with what else we've been keeping busy on. But if you're joining us live in the chat, we are always glad for your comments and questions. We try to tackle those and incorporate them because this is not only just three of us talking about, but this is the rest of the community talking about our love for games and the passion for the industry as well. So glad to have you here. If you are in the chat, please join in. And if you're not and you're listening to this later on, we record every Sunday evening at 8 o'clock Eastern time in the States. So please feel free to jump on, join in, and be part of the conversation. Tile Master, I'm going to start with you because this is a game that is not a brand new game, but it's new for the platform. So Star Wars Outlaws came out on Nintendo Switch 2. There's some news stories around it this week in terms of it being a game key card and the Ubisoft developers. So this is out of Massive. It's using the Snowdrop engine, I believe, which is what was used for Division 2. Also what was used for the Avatar game as well. So this came out on PS5, Xbox, and PC last August, I believe, and now just launched. It's the complete edition, the gold edition, which includes the DLC with Lando Calrissian and Hondo, I believe, the Star Wars Clone Wars bounty hunter is also in the DLC. But the news this week around it was that it needed to be installed and not running off a game card because of the way that it's accessing memory and streaming kind of the open world. So Tao, first question, how does it play? And had you played it before? And if not, how are you enjoying it now? I played it on Xbox. I believe Game Logic, I think you played it a little bit as well.
I did. I don't remember what system I have on. I picked it up on the Nintendo Switch 2 as well. So
okay, well let's have you both talk about your experience with Star Wars Outlaws for the Nintendo Switch 2. Tao, do you want to get us started? That is not a face that sounds super confident, Tao. Game Logic, as Tao's getting ready. So you picked it up. What caused you to pick it up, Game Logic?
I picked it up because I'm an Ubisoft stan. And Tao's having some technical problems. His headset just bounced on him. I bought it last year. Like I said, I can't remember what I bought it on. I think I bought it on PC. I may have bought it on PS5.
Last year at this time, I don't know that you were back in the console ecosystem.
I was definitely not. I did so I dipped out of consoles for a year. I just can't remember. So I must have it on PC somewhere, maybe on Epic. Or maybe I may have bought it direct. Maybe that's why I'm not remembering, because it may have been one of the really, really rare new games that I bought directly from from Ubisoft.
Look at that. Nate is keeping track of us. Thanks. Yes, I believe Game Lodge. I think you're right, Nate. That game did have it on PC.
Yeah, so I played it. It had some problems. I did not. I wasn't as impacted like as some other people were, and I was fine with it. I just had other games that came out, and I got busy.
Yeah, the knock on it when it first came out was kind of the stealth system and some of the discovery and done aspects of some of those missions, and they patched that later on.
And the main problem I had was with mission breaking. With sometimes like when you were in an area and then you went out of area and you went back, and just kind of how the game was handling kind of like respawning or resetting of objectives. There were ways to dork things up so that you couldn't like get back to an objective or complete a thing. So I put it aside. And it's been on my, hey, I want to get back to this thing list, for this year. Of course, this year has been bonga crazy. But what I'd said was, I was like, hey, this is one of the games that's coming out on Nintendo Switch 2. And I have a few games on the short list, right, that I want to pick up on Switch 2. MLB, I want to try Madden. And this was one of them. So I picked it up and downloaded. I haven't played it yet, but I did. Actually, take that back. I did play the very introductory level, and haven't even gotten off the planet yet. But that was the main reason why I got it. And I think Tao is back now.
How much time have you had to play with it, Tao?
Just under 3 hours, like 2 hours and 50 something minutes that I got into it. And I did hear your questions before. Sorry, I lost my headset there for a second. And I hadn't played it before, so I hadn't played. I was kind of waiting for the Switch 2 version because I knew it was going to come out eventually on there. So that's why I kind of waited for it to come out, and I didn't play it on anything else. And I did want to play it. Like, it looked really good. Yeah, I know there's been a big hubbub about Hooblu, whatever you want to say, about like the graphics and how it runs. And so far, I've only played a handheld. I haven't had a chance to play it on docked yet. But it seems to be running fine. Like, I haven't had any issues. I've been in areas now. I'm past the first planet. I'm on the second planet you get to. And kind of you get that open world, kind of the speeder bike area you start off in, which is there's not like a whole lot right now in that area. I don't know if it gets a little bit more people or more animals or whatnot. There's a couple, like, I think raiders or pirates or something that I ran into, and they were kind of like running around me, and it was running fine. I didn't have any problems. A few like creatures and stuff that I ran into. Once again, I didn't have any issues. Got like to the main ports of that planet, and once again, there's like people everywhere, and everybody's moving around, everybody's talking and stuff, and I haven't had any issues, any stuttering or anything like that. So that I just kind of saw the headlines for what people kind of complain about. I didn't have a chance to like look into the articles, so I don't know what like the nuances they were complaining about were. But like, so far, like I said, it's been running fine. It looks fantastic. Obviously, it's not going to look as great as a PC or PS5 Pro or Xbox Series X, but it's still, I think it looks like really good and really great. Pretty much on par with Cyberpunk. I mean, that looks great too, I think, on there. Obviously, once again, not PC quality, but it's not supposed to be. I think we all know the power that this thing can do, but it still looks gorgeous. It's still better what the original Switch could have done if it couldn't even run it, probably more than likely. But yeah, having a lot of fun. I got my little what's the little creature you got? Nyx, I believe, that you can kind of run around with and send him off and do stuff sometimes, get things for you. Looks like there's maybe more abilities I'll be able to do with him, as I'm kind of going. I've gotten a couple things where he can just like hit a button if I can't reach it, or he can grab stuff for me, and you can kind of like do like a ping out, so you can kind of see like enemies around you. So that's kind of nice, like when you're kind of doing those stealth areas. And I did read about those stealth missions. I guess sometimes like you would, like if you got found out like right away, you're done. You had to like restart over. That's not the case here. You can just fight your way out if you have to. I'm assuming that they patched that after at the beginning. From
patched by the time Christmas rolled around, I think. So
yeah. But I'm having a lot of fun with it so far. I don't know if you get to do any. Kind of like when you first got off that first planet, you're kind of in control of the ship you're in, so I don't know if there's any space stuff later on. It seemed like it's pretty good. You're nodding your head. Okay, so and that seemed pretty.
Get space flight and combat.
Okay. Yeah. So that's, you kind of got a little taste of that at the beginning, but not much. I kind of like, onto the next planet pretty much right away once you get off there. But yeah, just having a lot of fun so far with it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Going to continue on playing with it though.
So Tao, standard E2KG question: handheld or docked?
Just handheld so far. I haven't tried the docked yet. I didn't get a chance to. So, but I definitely will probably do that this coming week, so I can compare the two.
Yeah, I'll be curious to hear how it runs docked as well. So, I mean, it's a really enjoyable game. They did a lot of work in terms of patching it to make it even more accessible and enjoyable. Glad you picked it up. Be interested to hear how it hooks you if it does. So that's great. And Nate had a comment here early on in terms of some of the challenges with Switch gameplay. Not only this game this week, but also the launch of NBA 2K26 on Switch was also kind of up in the air. The Switch 2 version of 2K26 did not have an early access period, and so there wasn't the same aspect or the same access to see what that ran like. On the 2K26, it's definitely running at 30 frames per second. It sounds like you're saying the performance here feels pretty smooth in terms of handheld gameplay.
Yeah. I didn't. Down at 60, it's probably 30. I haven't read any articles on what that is, but I'm assuming it's 30. But yeah, it's so far it's been smooth. It's been pretty good transitions too from like the kind of cutscenes going into like the gameplay. It's pretty seamless. Like it's not as obvious like it was in Mortal Kombat when I was playing that Mortal Kombat 1, where you can definitely see the quality go down. And Mortal Kombat 1 wasn't, didn't get the upgrades or anything like that visually for it when it came to the Switch 2. But this one is definitely like more of a seamless transition between the two. So that's kind of nice too. You don't get that jarring like, oh wow, like okay, yeah, this is definitely, they definitely should have done this on this system. But yeah, it's definitely a lot better.
Nice. Yeah, I mean it's a fun game. I enjoyed what I've played. And it's I'm excited for it being on Switch 2 because it's such a big world, and having at $60 you get both the DLCs with it as well. So it's a great value for people that haven't had a chance to experience it before.
Yeah, and gameplay wise, I've seen some people kind of complain about like the gunplay, but I mean, it seems fine to me. Like it's some of the enemies sometimes are kind of tanky, but it's not too bad. And that might kind of go back to their Division 2, the Division 2 days where obviously those kind of things were tanky and stuff like that.
Yes, lots of bullet sponges in Division 2, that's for sure. And we'll talk about that maybe a little bit later on the show as well.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, let's move off. Go ahead, Game Logic. You got another question?
Well, just my only thing to add, right, is I mean the commentary kind of reinforces, why I did go ahead and plunk down and pick it up again. Is I always am a fan of Ubisoft's stick-to-itiveness. You can, I mean, they're worthy of other criticisms for other stuff, but it is kind of exemplary in the industry that they like stand behind like not everything. I mean, they definitely have things that they've pitched glass on, but like the vast majority of their properties, they get behind and they stand behind and they stick with them. And I think, and I've talked about that before from a monetary perspective, but in a week where comments have gone around from former executives about like how people feel, in the environments that they work in, and in the wake of like the Blizzard, the Diablo employees, unionizing, and some of the comments that kind of came out of that, and like why they unionize and what the environment is. I think it speaks. Again, Ubisoft has not proven itself to be like the best work environment, but I think it goes some distance, when you're on a development team and that people are going to stick behind you and stick behind your game and give you the opportunity, right, to keep plugging away at it, right, and turn it around and prop it up to be the thing that you wanted it to be in the first place. So
yeah, I think that is one thing they've been consistent at in terms of kind of long-term support of some of their full release games. Definitely not always in their games as service games, things like their Battle Royale and X Defiant. But when they ship a game, they definitely stick around and continue to support that over time.
Well, and that's the kind of weird thing about it, right? The games as a service one are the ones that they will roll shop up on if it's not doing what they think it needs to do. But like the single player games that they're not getting paid anymore for, right? By dropping like, some of the content that they drop. So yeah, it's weird and interesting, but I think there's some positives that come out of it.
I think in some ways I feel like part of that model for Ubisoft is their ability to, their desire, I should say, to have IPs that can become franchises, right? Like they don't want to leave a bad taste in somebody's mouth for a game that they might want to come back to the well on. It is easier to roll up shop, as you said, on a games as service that isn't going to, spoil a brand name, where something like Star Wars game, Division, even For Honor, right? Like they've come back, Rainbow Soft 6, like, they've definitely made sure to preserve the IP or the ability of an IP. All right. Well, let's move from Star Wars Outlaws to another game that was a long time coming, and this is Team Cherry's Hollow Knight Silksong. So Silksong is the follow-up to Hollow Knight, as you can, if you have watched any presser, announcement trailer, direct at any point in time over the last 4 years, chances are somebody has referenced Silksong in terms of anticipation. This came out this week after a short announcement cycle. It was announced during Gamescom Live opening night, and then just released this week on basically everything. And I've been playing it on Xbox because it was included in Game Pass. It's a really solid game. And I say that as somebody who, okay, this will take me down a few pegs in my gamer cred, but someone who did not really enjoy Hollow Knight. Like, I appreciated it in terms of what it was and what it did. It was a little too intense. I don't know. It was a combination of the gameplay never quite hooked me, or I never stood with it long enough for it to grab me. Because the world did not hook me. But here in Silksong, it's the complete opposite. It's not any easier, that's for sure. It is still very difficult.
And both of these are like Metroidvanias, right?
Yeah, both of these are kind of action platformers. Yep. Game, what were you going to say?
I seriously apologize because I should have done this and pitched it beforehand. But now, as you're saying some of these, I feel like we should do a very quick agenda change and go ahead and because most of my questions about your experience in Silksong, yes, are going to come about from my experiences in Hollow Knight.
Okay, well, let's bring Hollow Knight right on up here to
So-
lead in before we talk about Silksong. So you went back to Hollow Knight, or did you pick it up, or have you had it?
So I never played it. I didn't, from the stuff that I saw about it, it never pierced the veil of interest for me. But I was playing around with, setting up PlayStation Plus Premium cloud streaming on a PC. So I dove down into like the game catalog of what was available. I have also picked up Silksong on Nintendo Switch 2 just because it was so cheap. I was in the eShop, so good on Ubisoft for drawing me into the eShop. And then while I was there, I was like, oh well, I may as well just pick up Silksong. So there were definitely some things in my gameplay of Hollow Knight that were latency and lag driven, right, by playing through the cloud. But there were the first thing that stuck out to me is what was in my mind was having played Ori. And I think I played the first Ori on PC. I played one of them on PC and one of them on Xbox. I think I played the first one. I think I played the first one on PC, and then I played the second one on Xbox. I'm not absolutely certain, but so that was one of my points of reference. And then and so those were kind of the two things that I was looking at from a Metroidvania perspective. So regardless of the latency and the lag that I experienced, my sense of it is number one, again, classic E2KG question that comes up every single time any co-host brings a platformer into the conversation is first question is this a precision platformer, and is it going to be nitpicky and stingy and hateful about, like, you have to be right on the edge of the platform and, like, not, you have like 1 millimeter of tolerance, or else you're going to miss the jump. That was my sense of a lot of things from what I played of Hollow Knight, is that it is in that category
Yeah.
of, like,
It's definitely precision, right? And it's not precision in the same way of like a Super Meat Boy Celeste type of way, but it is very precise. Hearing you talk about it, sorry for the camera drop. I had to take care of a dog here for a minute, but hearing you talk about the latency, like, that would be incredibly difficult because it's such a tight platformer, and some of those, not only the combat, but some of the jumps you have to make and the stringing together of abilities. Yeah, I mean, in part that was why I bounced off of it, because I just couldn't, at the time that I was playing it, couldn't commit that headspace to kind of really sink into it. Like, I can see where it's demanding of a player, and if it's demanding of a player and the the platform you're playing on has a little bit of lag, it's setting you up for a real challenge. That's for sure.
now does Silksong hold on to that?
Yeah. Yeah. But in some ways I'm enjoying it more, in part because, and this is such a petty thing. Like, in the music, again, the ambiance is just top notch. And so the same as Silksong. I mean, it's certainly the same as Hollow Knight. The fact that Silksong has some color to the world, its bosses from the beginning are very colorful. That makes it a little more, I don't know, inviting of a world to go into. And I understand why you get the design choice of Hollow Knight being what it is. But Silksong, yeah, it is tight platforming from the very beginning, even in the opening sequence. Like, before you even get to the kind of the first tutorial boss, which is very much in a Mega Man-esque, you got to figure out that pattern to be able to. I died multiple times against the first boss. Like, even understanding what the pattern was, still plenty of death there. But even to get there, there's some platforming challenges where you've had to. There's one, and it does a great job of kind of introducing this to you. Like, it doesn't tell you; it just shows you. You've got these platforms to get to. One platform's got a bug that's rolling around it, and pauses just a minute, and you have just enough time to jump from the platform to hit that bug platform and jump back, where any delay is gonna get you hit. Like, so it introduces that concept of, you're gonna have some tight platforming windows here from the very beginning, but does it in a way that doesn't feel handholdy or doesn't feel punishing. Like, it's forgiving in the way of letting you know that, but it definitely from the get-go tells you the kind of sense of, yeah, this is going to be a game that's going to be demanding of you as a player, but we're going to give you precision controls, and they do, in order to make those things possible.
So I'm hoping you stick with this game, because we're probably not going to have time to unpack everything tonight. Because, like, so music, I actually felt the music in Hollow Knight was very, again, coming from Ori, right, is my frame of reference. I was like, this orchestral mix, like, does not compare in any way, like, to, like, the music in Ori was very tightly coupled to the notion of feeling and emotion that you had in the game, and I felt like you were consistently engaged in that, like, from step to step to step to step. Whereas Hollow Knight, I just felt like it was kind of background ambient noise, and, like, there was, not a lot going on there thematically.
You definitely get more ambient noise than the kind of orchestral score that something like Ori does for you. In part, just the scale of the development team. I'm not far enough into Silksong to know where that ends up. Like, if it ends up giving you get more rise and fall. But yeah, I definitely want to stick with it. I'm enjoying it. I appreciate it. I understand what it's trying to do, and I think for the first time, I'm actually willing to try to engage with it enough to do it. It's one of those where Like it doesn't. It's not great for a weekly podcast in terms of so frequently I bounce off something, right? I try it for a little bit and bounce off to be able to have something else to talk about. This is a game where if I was a kid that was only getting a few games, back in the day when we were kids, like if this was Super Metroid, I would stick with it and figure it out because it is one of those where it is demanding, but it's also doesn't feel unreasonable in its demands.
So my last question for tonight, like I said, I think we have a ton of these to pull apart. Is in playing it Hollow Knight, and so my question is, does this persist into Silksong? Going back to that discussion of precision, so not only was there platform to platform precision, but I also felt like the cavernous environments that you were typically working in, that like in Hollow Knight, you start off with a pretty decent vertical. Like you haven't got any type of a double jump or anything, but like you are able to jump to the almost max height of any kind of cavern you're in. So the problem then becomes, because there's multiple overhangs and things in the cavern, that so many times, particularly when you're in combat, when you're trying to do a jump or trying to get over a pit, or trying to do both right at the same time, you will wind up hitting your head on some overhang like that's in the cavern, and then that impacting right the trajectory of your jump, winding up and you taking damage or getting killed. So does that kind of persist in terms of the environment and the levels in Silksong?
It feels a little more. I mean, you do start off kind of cavernous. It feels a little more open, but not as tight as it did in Hollow Knight. And I guess I would say, at least from what I've gained in my understanding of playing Silksong, is that in those instances where you're finding yourself hitting your head, the level is designed in such a way to encourage you to change the trajectory of your jump, right? It's telling you what you're trying here is not going to be successful, and it's doing so within the environment rather than throwing an enemy at you type of thing. I do feel like that. I feel like there is, in the Metroidvania aspect, like there are things even early on in this game where I'm seeing, sure, I wish I had a double jump because I bet I could get up there, or I wish I had something that I could do, a ledge jump to string together. Like there are times where I could see something and even see something destructible that I feel like there must be a reason it's there. Like the design and the intention of the level definitely feels like it's encouraging me to. I'm very cognizant of it after coming from, and I think it would be interesting to hear your perspective, even after playing a little bit of recent Hollow Knight and coming into Silksong, like how much of the design language does Team Cherry use from one game to the other? I think it feels like it's gonna deserve its praise, but it also is in some ways Hollow Knight is such an interesting case, right? Because it was not a huge success upon launch. Like it was something that had this kind of snowball rolling down the hill kind of momentum. And so to launch something like Silksong in such a kind of a hungry marketplace for it, it'll be interesting to see people that only know of it by the kind of the desire and kind of viral aspects to it, whether this is something that they grab onto because it's a game they enjoy, or if it's something that they have enjoyed watching people play and are aware of it.
Or if it's something that they only bought because it's in the zeitgeist, which gives us a great segue into our first news story.
Exactly. Thank you. I was leading up to that, right? So yeah, Silksong I will definitely be playing more of it. We'll talk more about it. But our first news story coming from Tao here is talking about how much and how popular Silksong was upon its release.
Yeah, this is coming from GameIndustry.biz from Vicky Blake. So today, September 4th, which was a few days ago, release of Hollow Knight Silksong crashed global stores right across Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox, and Steam's digital platforms. And I think Good Old Games actually had a problem too. I believe I was the other one that I heard of. It didn't say it in this article, but I think I read that somewhere else. As fans clamored to purchase and download Team Cherry's highly anticipated follow-up to the Indie Smash Hollow Knight, players found themselves unable to complete their purchases or even load the game's page. Nintendo ended up having their store taken down briefly, completely, whilst attempts to purchase the game on Steam triggered something went wrong error messages, and players on PlayStation were struggling to find the game on the PSN store at all. Xbox Game Pass subscribers similarly struggled to download the sequel via either the app or Xbox's consoles. DB, did you have any? I don't know if you tried like right away or if it was like later on in the day when you tried.
No, it was later on that night when I tried to download off of Xbox. So by that time, things had stabilized. But...
Yeah. Okay. And then finally, Team Cherry's Solo Adventure is already one of the biggest games of all time, according to Steam DB, securing a spot in the top 20 biggest Steam games ever by concurrent count. Record likely to be repeated, smashed as we go into the weekend.
They had what, over 500,000 people playing concurrently?
Yeah, I believe
on opening day. Yeah, very impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And right, is Steam's most Steam's most wishlisted game of 2025, appearing on 4.8 million wishlists.
Well, let's go from a high point news story to a low point, and a developer close. Go ahead.
Before we move on from that, TBQ, I can't find the text. I had pulled this data together a little earlier, but so just on this note, and I didn't say anything to this effect on the day that the game launched because I didn't want any kind of negative, right? But so Hollow Knight sold, I want to say, 3 million copies within like 2 or 3 years. Like it took a while for it to get to 3 million copies. It has sold 15 million, but it took like it hit that number like February of this year. So I think it was about 8 years for it to sell through. So I think one of the things to note, and again, this is just an interesting data point, not saying anything about the game, is that like based on the sales numbers, right, of the previous title and this title, the high amount of initial engagement tells me that like there's a ton of people who are on Silksong who are not coming from Hollow Knight. And so there's one thing when people are getting on a game because it's the sequel, because they played the first. It's another thing when people are jumping into the sequel because it's zeitgeist, right? Which is a very easy thing to do when it's $20 and when the game is in Game Pass. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how this thing plays out, right? Whether or not the sell-through rate is going to be at the same pace as Hollow Knight, or it will be quicker if the high engagement numbers wind up being equivalent with the sell-through, then we should see it, right? We should see it accelerate at a commensurate pace, right? It shouldn't take the same amount of time to sell through as it took to hit.
Yeah, right. I would anticipate it being exponentially faster to hit those thresholds.
Right. If the sales pace continues, right? And that's the thing that I'm interested to see, right? Is this an initial toilet bowl flush, right? That then winds up getting squeegee down to a trickle, or does it maintain pace?
Wow, you just are hitting it with that that visualization there. Like first it's a toilet bowl flush, and then I'm using a squeegee. Oh man, I feel sorry for your bottom.
Well, it's an interesting case study to watch, right? Because this is the tail of the tape that we're seeing with Monster Hunter Wilds, right? Bonga sales out of the gate, and then a trickle, which is now becoming a problem. Now, it's two developers. They're making Bonga money because all the money's going to them. Like they're not going to have any financial trouble. So this is just more of just kind of watching market response and watching telemetry. The other thing to note about Hollow Knight is, wildly critically reviewed game, high scores, 9s and 10s all over the place, virtually no awards. I think if it won an award at one of the 5 majors, it was one. I think they won. No, they did. I think they were nominated for best. Yeah, they were nominated for best debut indie game at the TGAs. and wound up losing that year to Cuphead. And I don't think that they won any awards at any of the other 5 majors. They did win one award, but I don't think that was at one of the 5 majors. So again, it's just going to be a note of like, watching the telemetry, sales versus engagement numbers, critical acclaim versus awards, where this thing breaks out right as we go into award season. So it'll just be interesting to see, if we're seeing a lot of attention gained from the news stories and the jokes every week. I mean, you could kind of almost say you could attribute some of the Nintendo Switch 2 sales to that, right? That like for so many years we said, Super Nintendo, Switch Plus, whatever, and then when it finally hit, then that was part of why people went out and bought it. But we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think it wouldn't surprise me, given the visibility of this game, that it is much more on the radar for Game of the Year and award season discussions than Hollow Knight was. Yeah. Okay, Game Logic, go ahead and stay on the mic because we're going to move from talking about a game selling well to a game that was maybe struggled against what the publishers thought, which is why we get another round of studio layoffs.
Well, the question here is did it, right? So, we have the past recent experience of, Hi-Fi Rush supposedly hitting all of the numbers that it needed to, but then the studio being closed. And here we have kind of an analogous instance where Strauss Zelnick came out and said, Civilization 7 is doing fine. I expect a bunch of good things to happen in kind of the tail sales. This is the kind of expectation that we always have with the Civilization series. And supposedly, Take-Two was okay with the way things were going, but now we have this. So this news story reported over on Kotaku. Firaxis lays off dozens of devs after Civilization 7 struggles. 2K Games has confirmed that an unspecified number of developers at Firaxis have been laid off following the release of Civilization 7 earlier this year. The strategy game struggled with critics and fans when it was released in February. On September 4th, game developer reported that layoffs had happened at the long-running strategy game studio Firaxis, famous for developing the recent XCOM games as well as the Civilization franchise. Online developers posted messages on social media and LinkedIn confirming the layoffs. 2K later confirmed to the outlet that it had indeed let go of numerous workers. I don't remember if a number was given or even an estimate. I think the thing that kind of hits hard again, so many things this year are a matter of being timely and kind of how the interpretive layer we're putting them through has to do with other things going on in the industry. Like I talked about, how Pete Hines' comments kind of make me feel and evaluate about like what's going on at Ubisoft, right, in terms of their resilience that they put behind their games. This one also, recent with the recent event of Turn 10 Studios, basically being reduced to the number of people that will, from here on out, kind of make it a support studio, right, to Playground, which is just crazy, weird, right, for Turn 10 to have been an Xbox studio since the early 2000s. Parents of the Forza series, the Forza Motorsport was kind of an I don't want to say it was an afterthought, but it was, it was always the spinoff, right? And now, the studio that took care of the spinoff is now kind of the lead studio. So the point being is that when I see things like this happening before this year, I think that there were so many studios that in our mind were just going to be around forever, right? That like no risk of them ever but now when you see something like that happen to Turn 10, you're like, I don't know that it's feasible that anybody won't be taken off the board. That's been, that the longevity of a studio may not matter, particularly when you're in a corporation that is so finely and granularly tuned and run with regards to metrics and finances. It's the industry evolves. It's been evolving for 53 years. The wheel continues to go round and round, and so we'll have to see how things happen. But this is not kind of the nothing burger that maybe we would have kind of looked at it before.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to I don't know that anybody's ever said a nothing burger is a great way to say it, but yes, I think it is a good way to say it in terms of for a franchise, a long established franchise, and something that has had ebbs and flows in terms of its popularity and its numbers, but is consistent in a way that few franchises have been. But I think the evolution or the kind of change in the industry, as you say, in terms of what sales numbers expectations look like for a game of scale and publishing on multiple platforms, not just a PC release, but something that was out on all 3 consoles, like what that development time and cost and labor expectations look like from a publisher standpoint at this point in time is completely different than what it was when Civ 5 came out and was super buggy and took the Ubisoft approach of sticking with it and patching it through. That this game has seen iterations and changes, but it's also not seen an industry that is so quick to pull the trigger on layoffs and downsizing as it is currently.
Well, and you bring up a good point. I don't really have a good analysis statement about it, but but part of the dynamic is you go back to Civ 4, Civ 5, Civ 3. These games were just PC, right, at launch. And then maybe ports came later, but now you're looking at a franchise that goes to console right away. It goes to the Switch of all platforms. It is an iOS title. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's on Android. But I know it winds up on iOS. So it's a much bigger footprint from a perspective. I would say definitely if you look at the design decisions that got made for this year, and I think some of the design decisions I think have to be this is a 30-year franchise. At some point, right? No matter how successful it is, you got to try and change something, right? I am. It's not wackadoodle to me that people would have thought, hey, we need to make a major paradigm shift and start moving this franchise in a different direction. However, what I will say is that you can definitely see from the design choices that they made that there's definitely things that they were convinced were going to help because they worked well on mobile, or they worked well on console. You go back to when the first of these things was ported to the Switch, and you remember all my comments, which were there's no way you would know how to play this game unless you had played the PC version, right? Now you have a title that is, to me, decidedly kind of mobile first almost. Maybe not as bad as Diablo Immortal, but definitely kind of moving, it's across the line at the 51st percentile now, right, of moving in that direction. So tougher and tougher for them to manage and find a way forward, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to frame it, and the kind of the challenges of developing across multiple platforms and not just consoles, but mobile as well, as you said. It's a significant lift in an investment. So, Tao, did you have a question here or a statement? I see your hand on your mic.
I was just say Civ 6 is on Android.
Okay. Yep. I knew Civ 6. Yeah. All right. Well, let's go from one challenging developmental piece to another. And back in the summer, their EA had teased that they were coming back with college basketball after their successful relaunch of college football in 2025. And we've talked about both college football 25 and 26 here on this podcast. And then this week over at it was Extra Points, Matt Brown over at Extra Points, and this news article is here on CBS Sports from Austin Nivison. But the first break of this came from Matt Brown over at Extra Points, talking about that NCAA and institutions were passing on or turning down EA Sports iteration of college basketball, that their pitch was to pull in all Division I both men's and women's college hoop and pay NIL money to both the players of those teams, and also obviously money to the institutions that would be highlighted and included here within kind of the full D1 roster. The one caveat that EA had wanted was exclusivity in college basketball, and 2K Sports shortly thereafter. Not so that was the kind of the pitch that EA had, and shortly after, back in June, when EA teased that they were coming back with college basketball, 2K got out there and said they were exploring college basketball as well. And 2K's kind of rival pitch, counter pitch, was to. It started off as the reporting goes, it started off as only 10 teams, that they would highlight 10 teams in Division 1. And it would start as probably some my team, kind of the card-based aspects in 2K basketball, and would then be expanded into another mode within 2K. And the timeline that they gave was to have some material within 26, and then 27 and 28, and the announcement that, as basically what it sounds like, and reading the announcement from Matt Brown and some of the additional analysis here, is that the development time that EA would have taken delayed, would have delayed any type of financial revenue that institutions would have seen, which is partly why NCAA encouraged people to adopt the 2K version, which was going to create revenue a whole lot sooner. And upon EA backing out this week in the exclusivity, 2K came out and expanded what they're planning to go from to feature more than 100 programs. That they plan to kind of launch something in 27, and it definitely feels like, and all the reporting around it feels like, it's going to be within the existing NBA 2K game and platform, rather than a standalone product at this time. And one of the things that 2K talked about, that putting these things into existing games to see what the viability of a standalone college hoops game is. We haven't really seen any college hoops since the late aughts, with both 2K's college hoops, 2K 08, I believe, was the last college hoops there. And then March Madness from EA was probably 11, I think, is the last time we've had a game there. So the big reporting here is that a standalone game from EA looks like it's no longer going to happen, as EA is backed out after institutions were passing on the exclusivity, and that we're going to see something embedded within NBA 2K26 or 27 at least. And it sounds, the speculation here is it becomes another marketing bullet point for the ever expanding 2K game, as we talked about earlier, which launched this week, which includes both the NBA and some EuroLeague teams this year, and the WNBA, and now potentially up to 100 programs in D1 college basketball. So, as somebody who has really enjoyed EA's return to college sports with college football, this news story definitely stood out to me, because it's been such a while, and it seems like there's the potential market for some type of college basketball game. And I was looking forward to a standalone game. From a revenue perspective, I can see where building it into an existing platform and a game engine like 2K is certainly probably easier for institutions and NCAA to accept, because it doesn't run the risk of hitting a janky EA basketball game engine, which has certainly happened in the past. Any thoughts here, gentlemen? Any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually a little disappointed overall. Like, I really loved, EA's NCAA basketball back in the day. I really prefer a full game dedicated, because, like, I
I completely agree. Yeah.
You know,
I
I
don't
don't
want a big microtransaction heavy college football. I mean, a college basketball game. I would like a standalone game like EA did with basketball, with football.
Yeah. Is there no? But there's Ultimate Team stuff in football too, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. It's not nearly as heavy. It's not nearly as much of a moneymaker as it is for Madden.
Okay.
So it's there if you want to engage with it, but it doesn't. Tracking both of those last year, both Madden and college football, the college football one was not nearly as supported. Like once the season ended, it kind of trailed off on support, where Madden continues all with like Easter Bunny stuff and the draft and all kinds of other stuff.
I think the main thing for me is like I would like I would like that college football experience, right? I would like the whole, like all the pageantry and the menagerie and like the culture that kind of comes through that college football experience, which I just don't think you're going to get that in NBA 2K as a mode. That's a subset, right,
Right.
of the larger game.
You may get the tournament, right? You might get a March Madness bracket. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I enjoy playing 2K, but like, but I don't get immersed in 2K. Like I don't get to a point where like I care about like the league, right? Like I do in college football, right? And kind of living that experience almost kind of like that little RPG playing in your head. Like I don't get that out of 2K. But I would do that like in a transformative experience that was entirely wrapped around, you know, the notion of college hoops. So yeah, I would prefer it standalone. It's weird. I mean, I guess the unfortunate thing is too the way this deal must have gone down is that the biggest schools that already make the most money are probably the ones that took the deal with 2K and saw themselves the gain. With this is the unionization conversation again, right? This is like, hey, I make a ton of money. Why in the world would I unionize and share that with like other people in collective bargaining, right? So yeah, just unfortunate.
Yeah, that those big schools that were highlighted probably in that first dozen or so that we're looking at that as a fast revenue gain versus something that was going to take 5 years to spin up and be shared across everybody else. And suddenly that makes the exclusivity fall apart. It is. I'll be really interested to see what this is, but yes, in terms of the state of the games industry, competition, having multiple, we're at a spot where we don't have. There's not any professional sports league that has two different games going on that push innovation or kind of that aspect that we've had back earlier. And I think in some ways it goes right back to the Firaxis story of the amount of time and money that development takes, that it is a worthwhile investment for publishers to spend the extra money to lock up an exclusivity or to try to lock up an exclusivity, because it's more of a guaranteed revenue stream.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. My comment should not be taken as if I was putting it all on 2K. Even though I probably initially was, because I hadn't thought it all the way through. But now in retrospect, I need to also remember, like, part of this is also because of EA forcing the exclusivity issue, right? And wanting to be the only, right, being the only person.
Yeah, it definitely cuts both ways.
Hog.
Like EA holds some responsibility here of, they certainly could have, if they would have dropped that exclusivity, they could have moved forward. But then it goes back to the amount of development time and resources to put something that they don't have necessarily a locked up market for, especially if 2K was going to get it and have something already integrated into NBA 2K27, because it's an engine already up and running, and it was going to take them 4 years to spin up a game. Like, the market share would have been significantly eaten away from people who are already embedded within 2K's version of whatever college offers them. Yeah. I can see why EA would have walked, but it's disappointing on both ends. All right. Well, let's move off some game news into some hardware aspects. We've got some both Lenovo and some Steam or Valve aspects here. So, Tal, you want to take the Lenovo one first, and then Game
Yeah,
Logic
first.
take the Steam one.
All right. So first up, we got excuse me, Lenovo's Legion Go 2. It's got sort of official date, at least a month, and just some specs that they've dropped here. So the Legion Go, and this is from Tom's Hardware by Andrew Friedman. Lenovo has announced a true successor to Legion Go. Legion Go 2 still has an 8.8-inch display and detachable controllers, but has the new AMD Ryzen Z2 Extreme processor, up to 32 gigs of RAM, and Hall effect joysticks, among other things. So very similar to what they had shown in the prototype they had shown in CES earlier in the year. The display has dropped to 1920 by 1200 from 2560 by 1600 on the original. He says this makes sense considering the majority of modern AAA games couldn't run at that high resolution. Okay, Lenovo's making up for lost pixels by using OLED touchscreen with variable refresh rates of 30 to 144 hertz. Additionally, you'll get up to 2 terabytes of storage, with an additional 2 terabytes of storage with the micro SD card. So it's a lot of storage there. Batteries going up to 74 watts an hour from 49.2. So big jump there. Jumping down to the controllers real quick. Lenovo claims that the detachable True Strike controllers are more ergonomic, and they do pop off just like on a Switch, so you can take them out with a smoother feel and a smarter button layout. This definitely look less bulky, but we'll need to get our hands on it to say for sure. The controllers now have Hall effect joysticks that should prevent drift, and a redesigned D-pad that sits on a pivot disc. There's also a feature. They also feature 3 customizable buttons through Legion Space, and still feature the FPS mode from the previous generation, which lets you use the right controller like a vertical mouse. And also on the right-hand side, there's a touchpad, but they have lost the touchpad on the left side. Sorry, lefties. They did take that away. And then just kind of going through the ports real quick. They still have the 2 USB-C ports, one on the top, one on the bottom. Just like the Switch2 micro SD slot and a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. And the power button now has a fingerprint reader, so that's kind of nice. This is going to go for $1,049 US dollars, which is a little bit more than the previous version, which is basically $750 back in 2023. 2023, and then of course you still have the Legion Go S if you need to go a little bit less, if you want to buy something a little bit less. So pretty good specs there. I don't know if Gaming Logic, if this is any appeal to you, and obviously looks like it's still using Windows on here. And I think you had put another article in here with it getting the Xbox Windows version, I guess, later next year or sometime next year.
Yeah, so we've heard attestation that the improvements that Microsoft is making on the Windows experience on handhelds, basically having an iteration of the Xbox app really become your center of screen, UX, right? Instead of kind of going from the desktop, which is, I refer to it as Xbox big window mode, right? Because you can basically equate it to Steam, to the way the Steam Deck kind of took over Steam big window mode and applied that and made that its OS, and that it now is Steam OS. And so the Lenovo Legion Go, this iteration Go 2 is the first model confirmed to get it, I think, in an official announcement. So obviously it goes to the Asus ROG, Xbox Ally, and Ally X when it launches, but the Lenovo will get it, as well as the regular Asus ROG Ally will also be getting it at some point. I think I'll say early next year. The interesting thing about the whole console and getting the UI and all that is the competition this fall is going to be interesting, because basically what you have is you have this. You also have the MSI AI8 Claw that is coming out. That is their next iteration of their handheld SKU, and both that device and this Lenovo Legion Go have specs that are above and beyond the Xbox Ally X. And so we still don't know the price of the Xbox Ally X, right? So, I mean, what I would hope that would lead me to believe is that the Xbox Ally X will be priced competitively against these other devices, because both of those devices, the Lenovo and the MSI, have larger screens. They both have Hall effect joysticks. The Xbox Ally X has Hall effect triggers, but not Hall effect joysticks, and has a 7-inch screen. Some of the specs that we called out in that article, those are specs that you get at the higher SKU. So like the biggest and best SKU of the Lenovo Legion Go 2 is the one that comes with a 2 terabyte card. So, you know, if you want those specs, you will be paying for it. But that's at least what I hope. I hope the Xbox Ally comes out undercutting the prices for those two, because it's not coming out with the same specs. But if it does, that gives you kind of a nice array, right, at different price points. You get kind of the Samsung Galaxy effect, right, of product lineups at different price points for different consumers. So be interesting to see how it turns out.
Tao, is this something that's on your radar in terms of looking forward to, or just the continued evolution of this market and kind of the different form factors and models is something that we keep an eye on as an industry?
Yeah, I'm always going kind of back and forth whether I want to get a kind of Windows-based handheld, just because obviously with the Steam, yeah, I can play Xbox stuff on there, Xbox Game Pass stuff, but I can only stream it. So it's kind of a pain. You're like, I got to have a really good connection and all that. And, obviously if I'm playing something, I don't know, that's multiplayer or something that, that I might take a hit there. So but yeah, I'm just kind of going back and forth still. That if I want, Lenovo, if I want to wait for the, Asus to, go with the Claw, I'm always kind of just, it's always tearing me, either which way to try to figure out. Game Logic, could you have something? No? Okay.
Okay, well, let's go on to the Valve one here.
Just that I'm in the same place. I'm constantly like going back and forth, and I say I won't, but that doesn't mean that on some random day. Like when I bought the Steam Deck, it was just I said I wasn't going to, and then on some random day it became available, right? And I grabbed it. So
okay, listeners, if you ever hear Game Logic say he won't, just wait a few months. Just wait. Chances are it's either going to be a fear of missing out on something, or the pure love of trying to understand a new piece of tech that Game Logic will eventually jump on board for. Because even you grabbed a ROG Ally back in the beginning, didn't you?
No.
Or you were just looking at it? Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at and despite my love of gadgetry, these would have to become like the pricing would have to be a significant threshold shift. Like there's no way in the world I'm paying $1,500. Like the opportunity cost of that. I mean, that's a desktop PC upgrade.
Sure. That's a mortgage payment. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, they would. Yeah, something would have to change in the water to make that feasible.
Well, let's move from one piece. Yeah, go ahead and take us into the Valve trademark.
Yes, our last news story. This news story over on The Verge by Sean Hollister. Valve trademarked Steam Frame for its next gaming gadget. What's your guess? Valve has filed 2 trademarks, one for consoles, accessories, and controllers, and one for computer hardware generally. The Valve Index VR headset trademarked the same, so don't take console literally. With Steam Deck, it filed for handhelds too. I bet the Frame isn't Deckard, Roy, or Fremont, but the whole enchilada. And that's kind of what my assessment too. So it's kind of interesting that we have the Frame laptop, which is this laptop kit essentially, that where it's custom order right to what you want, but you can also then install your own parts and upgrade it. And this sounds to me like maybe it's the expansion of a Steam ecosystem, of multiple products in a product line that all run Steam OS. Now, the thing that makes that interesting isn't that the exact same thing that we've heard from Xbox, right? That this partnership with AMD is for the purposes of yielding a multi-SKU product line of things that are called in Xbox. And this is kind of one of the things I keep alluding to, is that it seems like the collision course that's happening and the potential spawning, right, of the new war, the new competitive category is going to be Xbox/Windows going head to head with Steam, much more so than Xbox going head to head with PlayStation and Nintendo. I spent a lot of time this week kind of going back and researching and looking at the history. It turns out that product line that I keep referring to, which was this thing that was historically in the 80s and 90s, that cut the slice north of consoles but south of full-blown computers, were called microcomputers. So your TI-99, Commodore 64, VIC-20, Amiga, Atari ST, Coleco Atom, those types of things were called microcomputers, and those were things that were, could obviously handle like a big gaming workload, but were also oriented so that the kid could use them to play games, but the parents could use them to do office work at home, and also be an educational device to get a kid like into a STEM lane, and introduce them to computing, and they could program on BASIC, and do some multimedia stuff along with it. So it'll be interesting to see if this is like the burgeoning category that we're about to see kind of come back onto the market. My hopes that it will work out, because what the market showed is that the market wouldn't bear it, or that it would only bear it for a certain amount of time. Maybe maybe the market has evolved, the user base has evolved to a point where it'll be more supportive of that sub segment of the market. But either way, as always, it's always interesting to see how Valve is gonna come out with this. My suspicion is that instead of getting a page of Steam boxes like we got when they tried to go that route, what we're going to get is a page of multiple products that kind of almost in an orientation that's Apple-esque from a SKU perspective, but obviously not, because Steam is all about Linux and open source and open systems. But just like you go to the Apple store and you find like a laptop and a mini and an all-in-one computer and standalone packages, that's what I think you're actually going to see. Is you're eventually going to see a Valve page of hardware that has a product line of SKUs across multiple form factors to enable you to play games that all run SteamOS.
Yeah, that wouldn't be surprising. And it would make sense in terms of continuing to bring that kind of interface out to a wider selection. All right, game, go ahead and stay on the mic, because we're going to move into our third and final segment here of everything else that we've been playing. You've got 2 RPGs on your playlist here, both Clair Obscura and Pillars of Eternity.
Yeah, and I'll go very quick because I know we're trying to get out of here. We already covered Hollow Knight, so we won't worry about that. But the other things I've been playing in the background is I have gone back to my second run of Clair Obscura Expedition 33 on PC. I did my first run on my copy from the Epic Game Store. I decided that I don't want that copy touched. It's to be preserved in perpetuity. That is the pristine representation of my experience, my real story experience in Clair Obscur. And I decided that if I was going to do New Game Plus, I was going to do that in a different copy, and I wanted to support those developers and yada yada yada. So I did buy a second copy of Steam, and that's the one that I went back to. I'm now playing in that, and so over the months when since I made this transition to using Apple products primarily for my content creation and multimedia, I had kind of repositioned and moved my ultra widescreen monitors around, and I'd put one in my upstairs office for work because I have a Mac there, and I'd moved one over to the other workstation where my Mac is. I decided I wanted to get those back into gaming, so I'm on this instance. I'm actually playing on a PC where I've put one of those ultra wide screens back in place. I'm playing at 3440 by 1440p, and with everything turned up, epic graphics settings, DLSS and performance mode, reflex on, and I'm getting like 118 to 130 frames per second. Amazing, gorgeous experience. I've also gone into this phase where I'm replacing, I think I mentioned this before, where I'm replacing all of any Xbox controller that I have that has a micro USB pin connector to it. I'm replacing all those, so I want everything to be on USB-C, and I'm replacing them with the 8BitDo Ultimate Wireless 2 controller. So like I said, I I'm playing this on that, with a different kind of graphical presentation, as well as the new controller. Everything feels slick, smooth, and gorgeous. I'm having a great time. And then I've also pulled down Pillars of Eternity. This was a game that I had on the Switch 2, but it's one of those games that I talked about on the Switch 2 where it's like, if you don't already know how to play the game, like it's very difficult to play it on Switch 2 because, they it seems like with their games, they don't in the ports, like for games like this, they don't tell you anything about how to play the game. This was the case with Civ. This was the case with Divinity 2. So I did go back to pull this down and give it a run. Having a good time with it so far. It very much harkens back to kind of Icewind Dale and Baldur's Gate. This is an Obsidian game. This was the game that they made off of their Kickstarter when times were very bleak for them. But it plays very much like Icewind Dale, which I played full playthroughs of Icewind Dale and Icewind Dale 2 with a very good buddy of mine. And so it's giving me those vibes, kind of going back to those worlds. So I'm having a good time with it.
Can I ask a world question on Pillars of Eternity? So you and I both played some Avowed back earlier in the year, which is in that same shared universe. I have not played either this or the second one, the sequel, Deadfire. But in the world building aspect, do you feel the ties between the two?
Yeah. Particularly when you've played it with recency, right? And they're little quirky things. There's nothing big, right? There's not it's kind of funny because because I watch the MCU movies, then I got my wife to sit down and watch the MCU movies. Now we're sitting down and watching them with our kids. And I'm doing the whole, right, this is how this is connected, this is how that's connected. Pay attention, you're gonna see that person again, blah blah blah. And so it's nothing as meaty as that. It's nothing like that's the collector. You need to understand who that guy is, right? And like, those were what Infinity Stones are, right? Like that's not where we are, at least so far for me in Pillars. There's things like they mentioned the stone, which I think they're called Adara, like the green stones that grow out of the ground and have energy like associated with them.
Like definitely interact with a lot in Avowed.
Yeah. So you have kind of cultural kind of world building references, right? So it's almost like you're watching like a spin-off, right? So there are these structures and organizations and stuff in it, but not like specific story winding. And then there's like the very small thing again, like cultural references of like the caravan leader that you're with talks like, I can't even remember his name now, the dwarf in Avowed. And it took me a while because now you're not, because Pillars of Eternity is, again, it's a top down isometric kind of old school party oriented RPG, not like Avowed, which is much more kind of in the Elder Scrolls format, right? So you're not hearing these lines spoken to you. So you're reading through the text, and it took me a while, but then it clicked. I was like, "There's something familiar about this." And then this guy's from the same area as that dwarf from Avowed, right? Because they're using the same kind of goofy replacements for curse words and things like that. So there's things like that. There's kind of a warm, fuzzy feeling, basically, that I would say you get from knowing you're back in the same world.
Nice. All right. Well, a game I picked up this week is Jotunnslayer, Hordes of Hel. So it is it came out this week. It's been in early access for less than a year or so. It's by Games Farm, which is a Slovakian developer. They also published the Vikings action RPG back in the late teens, kind of like Diablo with Vikings, and it definitely feels like that. It looks very much like a Diablo, but it plays like a Vampire Survivors. Like it is your kind of auto shoot. It's a roguelike. As you level up, you get perks, and you're doing runs. You start with only 2 characters that you can play, kind of a Viking kind of berserker barbarian aspect in Diablo-like, and a magician or a sorceress. There's also a rogue that there's a number of other characters that unlock as you go through, similar to Vampire Survivors, or as we've played the Deep Rock Galactic Survivor, where you're unlocking additional dwarfs. But one of the things that it does, which I like a lot, in addition to just being a beautiful looking game. Like, it looks like Diablo 4 in terms of playing it. But you have 2 buttons. Like, you have active skills that you can do in addition to just the auto firing that are on a cooldown. So you've got an attack skill, which, depending on what you spec, gives you an additional attack that you can call on. And it also has at least for the berserker, for the character, it has a dash move, which allows you to escape hordes a little bit better. Right, in a survivors game, you're always trying to dodge out of the way of these waves of characters, and having a dash move adds a little bit of complexity or a little bit more dynamic to it in terms of being able to move around. And you can spec that so that you do damage upon during the dash, or as you come out of the dash, that you can unleash an attack that provides damage. So you know, there's ways there that it adds a little bit more depth to the kind of classic Vampire Survivors aspect. But again, released this week. It's out on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. It's got a discount. It was only $12 on PC, so it was easy to pick up. But definitely enjoying on the Steam Deck, and it runs great on the Steam Deck. Again, kind of small text, but runs really smoothly and is fun to kind of pick up and play. You know, do a run or two and put it back down. Tao, speaking of something that you've been playing on the Steam Deck, you've been going back to No Man's Sky.
Yeah, they had their big Voyagers update this past week, a week and a half ago maybe now, which brought a bunch of fixes and stuff. But the big thing was you can create your own ships now. So these are corvettes. So these are a little bit bigger than the ships that you get normally. So you can actually, as you're building them, you can actually get out of, or after you build them, you can actually get out of the seat and kind of walk around it, depending on how you build it. If you have multiple levels or multiple sections and stuff like that, so it's actually kind of nice. And then you can actually bring these and do like multiplayer sessions where it can bring all your friends into the vehicle. Also, there's no like. They can't really do anything like in the vehicle. Like there's not like an engineering section and weapons and stuff like that, but at least they can ride with you. So you can all come along, in one ship. So that was the big thing. I've been kind of messing around with the ship building a little, which not usually I don't usually get into the building aspects of stuff. Like even base building, I'll just, I'll do like the basic, little square or rectangle or something and just kind of move on. But here is, it's a little bit more nuanced and kind of pieces just snap together. It's not totally free form when you're placing the things. So it's a little bit easier. So I've been messing around with that. And they also dropped the new expedition, which is kind of gives you I guess kind of a tutorial too. You kind of have a tutorial when you go into it anyways, but it kind of walks you through a little bit, maybe more handholdy through the expedition. So I've been doing that and actually almost finished that, even though it just came out like just a few days ago. So I've been running through that. So, and I think you get some special parts when you finish the expedition for your ship building. So I've seen some really cool like designs and stuff, just like on Reddit or different forums and stuff. So people doing, of course, classic Star Trek and Star Wars ships and stuff like that. But people have done like SR-71 Blackbird and just naval ships.
Nokia phone I've seen. Yeah. All kinds of variety of things, that's for sure.
Yeah. Some pixel art even, so it's kind of funny, kind of cool. But yeah, enjoying that.
Nice. All right, let's round this out, coming back to you, Game Logic. So earlier in the podcast, we were talking about Ubisoft's long support for some of their games. We talked about Massive with Tao's Star Trek or Star Wars Outlaws, and you've got Massive's game, The Division 2, back in 2019, but something that they still continue to do some updates and publish content for.
Yeah, so I won't spend too much time on it. I was trying to look up the name, but yeah, the ship I've seen from the No Man's Sky update was Thomas the Train. But yeah, so I went back to Division 2. So we've got a lot of sameness, not sameness, but a lot of concurrency in the rundown tonight. We play, one of us playing Hollow Knight, one of us playing Silksong, one of us playing Star Wars Outlaws, and me playing the Division 2. Again, both games out of Massive Entertainment, built on the Snowdrop engine. So this has been part of, again, one of the things I had on my list of like games that I want to get back to and do like a second run of. I've done 2 runs actually of the Division 2. One, single player by myself on PC, and then I ran through with a friend on PlayStation 5. And on that one, then extended and went on to like I think the first DLC into New York, I think.
Yep. Warlords of New York.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, this one was prompted by the new DLC that's out, but I haven't played it because I want to do a full playthrough and build a new character. So I'm doing that now in the early vestiges, just in like the first area in the northern district, I guess, or whatever, right adjacent to the White House. So still pretty early goings, but as always, the Division 2 is kind of my new comfort food, kind of like Destiny 2 used to be. Everything's consistent. Everything is like I know the workflow, I know the paradigms, I know, the upgrades I want to do and the different builds that I want to, mess around with. So yeah, having a great time with it. Playing that one on a 32-inch monitor at 1440p. So I started the run on a 1080p, like really high refresh rate monitor. So I have made like a hardware shift with that, and can see where it took a little bit of the hit, like in the frame rate. Obviously, there's tons of things you can tweak and monkey with on a PC, but that resolution, right, is the thing that provides that first like big performance hit. When you go from 1080p to 1440p and 1440p to 4K. So that's further reinforcement. Why 1440p for me is the sweet spot. To not incur that big threshold shift in performance hit, but yeah, having a good time with it.
Nice. Yeah, I still have it installed on Xbox, and every once in a while I have a chance to dip back in. But all right, gentlemen, that will do it more or less for the show. We've got a couple of big releases coming this week. We were talking earlier about EA and their sports franchises. This is NFL kickoff week, and Madden was a free weekend if you were playing on a couple of different consoles. Coming out this coming week on September 12th, you've got NHL 26, so this year's iteration of hockey. And then also on the 12th of September, you've got Gearbox's Borderlands 4. So Borderlands 4 definitely seems like it's been getting some good press in terms of the tone, a little more closer to Borderlands 2 and not as self-referential as Borderlands 3. I'll be very curious to see. I've got that pre-ordered, so I'll be definitely talking about it next week on the show. Next week on the show, we will be back. Game Logic, you are in the host chair. We will be here for episode 403 next Sunday evening at 8 Eastern Time. Feel free to come back and join us again. Nate, thanks for being with us in the chat. Everybody else who had the chance to stop on by, much appreciated. Glad to have you here. And hope you get a chance to join us again next week. If you are listening to this in between now and then, feel free to join us live every Sunday evening at 8 o'clock Eastern. So, any final thoughts, Game Logic, Tao, before we head out into the sunset? All right. Thanks again. I have been your host tonight, DBQ Hams. This has been episode 402 for the Enough to Keep Going podcast. So until next week, play the games you love those you play with, and be kind to yourself. Good night, everybody.